Hi guys, James back with another video, and this is one that I'd been working on for a little while along with others, and I kept redoing it almost to the point where I had almost lost the desire to do this one as a video, but then going over again tonight because of a select few movies. Well, I mean, I like all the movies, but a select few that I really think deserved to have some light shone on them and put into this list. So this is the top 10 prison films. Top 10 films take place in a prison. And let's see, so we'll start with number 10. Number 10 is from 2009, and it's a film called Stoic. And this is a film by Uwe Boll, one of his many non-video game movies that aren't based on a video game. This was an original film, and it's about 4 cellmates in prison who start with playing poker, and then the next morning one of them ends up dead, apparently has hung himself. And the movie's told through flashbacks and interviews with each of the 3 surviving inmates, and it's revealed what actually went on during the poker game and what led to the the events that led to the death of one of the inmates. And it is one of his more ordinary films, but it's got a bit of violence and language, some graphic violence in there. And out of all the actors, well, the main 4 principal actors in it, the most notable would be Edward Furlong from Terminator 2 and several other movies. Yeah, I didn't really recognize anyone else. The most recognizable face is Edward Furlong, but me, who's a fan of, I'd say most of Uwe Boll's films. I know most people aren't, but I think if you take them for what they are, you take out the video game movies and focus on his other films, like Tunnel Rats that I talked about, the Vietnam film, which was very well done. This is another one that's it's a really good, well done character piece, because you basically got just four guys in one room for the majority of the movie. And I thought it was really, really well acted. So that was Stoic. Number 9, we have a film called The Experiment. This is from 2010. And this is one of a few films that are based on the Stanford Prison Experiment, where they actually had a movie a few years ago called The Stanford Prison Experiment with Billy Crudup and Ezra Miller and all that stuff. And a bunch of great actors in that one. And that was a bunch of younger actors, were a bunch of students, I guess, that took part in the experiment. And this was just called The Experiment. So you get a bunch of adults that sign up. I think it's like 40 guys sign up so that there can be, no, it's 26, sorry. And 6 of them get to play prison guards, and 20 of the rest play prisoners. And it takes place in this prison. And it's another case of, given the freedom and the power of being like a prison guard, would you abuse that power or would you use it properly? And like, if you're playing a prisoner, would you behave like a normal person, or would you go crazy and be all disruptive and rebellious and basically become the role you're playing? And just as equally interesting as the Stanford Prison Experiment is The Experiment, but you've got just as equally well-known actors, just a lot older. So you got Adrian Brody playing one of the prisoners. Forrest Whitaker plays one of the prison guards, and he talks with Adrian Brody before they go in. He seems like a very meek, mild-mannered guy, and he turns into one of the most sadistic prison guards in there. Cam Gigandet is in there. Clifton Collins Jr., Maggie Grace, and let's see some other ones. Ethan Coen, Travis Fimmel, David Banner, Fisher Stevens. So it's another one that's got a great cast. And if you've seen the Stanford Prison Experiment, this would be an equally good depiction of that experiment, which actually took place, I believe, in Sweden, Stockholm. Oh no, well, I think so, but this one says it's a direct remake of the 2001 German film Das Experiment by Oliver Hirschspiegel, the guy who did The Invasion, that remake of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Anyway, very well done movie, The Experiment. Now this one is hard to find information on online. Well, there's nothing, you can't really find anything on Wikipedia, so I had to use IMDb. I found this one, it was just on the shelf at Walmart, I think. It was a direct-to-video, and it goes under two titles. The title that's on the DVD that I had is called The Hammer. Now, there's other comedy films out there called The Hammer. There's biopics out there called The Hammer. This is also a biopic, but the other one was about the UFC MMA fighter Matt Hamill. This one is another true story about George the Hammer Martin. And this is from 2017. And this guy is a real guy, and he was best friends with a guy named Doc, played by, let's see, George Martin is played by Gbenga Akinagbe. I'd seen him in some other stuff. And his best friend Doc's played by Jackson Rathbone of the Twilight franchise. And they've been friends since Juvie Hall, and they both end up in prison for several years. I don't know if it's quite a life sentence, but several years. And George is a boxer, and he ends up going undefeated in prison boxing. And it's interesting how the relationships work out in this film, because you got Doc is his cut man, but also his best friend in there. And George ends up getting into a relationship with a character named Crystal, who is a man living as a woman in the prison. And they enter into a relationship, and Crystal ends up in trouble, I think dying from AIDS. And George is offered a chance to participate in the 1984 Olympics in boxing, and he turns it down. A chance to get out of prison to fight for the U.S. in the Olympics, and he turns it down just so he can keep an eye on Crystal, protect her. And it's about the relationship, basically, from those three people in this one, as they live out their lives in prison, and George keeps on boxing and stuff. And let me see, any other recognizable? There's Michael Badalucco, Abraham Ben Ruby, Cara O'Donnell, Wayne Perry. Yeah, but I thought for a film that I knew nothing about and just picked it off the shelf as a blind buy, it was very well. Sorry, the alternate title this goes by is Heart Baby. So it's known under, when you look on IMDb, it's under The Hammer. If you look on Letterboxd, I believe it's under Heart Baby. So anyway, The Hammer. Number 7, we have a film from 1989 called An Innocent Man. And it is the movie starring Tom Selleck and F. Murray Abraham. MC Gainey is in there. And it's basically Tom Selleck plays James Jimmy Rainwood. And he gets set up by 2 corrupt cops. I think they plant drugs on him. He gets sent to prison. And he has to adjust to life in prison, find like the inside track and stuff. And F. Murray Abraham is in there, and who ends up helping him. And his goal is to somehow prove he's innocent and get out of prison and take revenge on these 2 corrupt cops. And most of it takes place. He's also trying to get back to his wife. And most of it takes place in the prison, and it's another interesting take on prison life and what he has to do to survive and get out. So this is the one I saw on TV years ago. I ended up finding the DVD, but I saw it on TV. Okay, so that was An Innocent Man. It would have been interesting if the Billy Joel song played in the movie, but I don't believe it does. Number 6, we have a film from 2019 called The Informer. And this one stars Joel Kinnaman, Rosamund Pike, Common, Clive Owen, and you basically got Joel Kinnaman playing Peter Kozlow, who, Ana de Armas is in there as well. And Peter Kozlow is a reformed criminal and former special ops soldier in the army, and he ends up working with the FBI to go undercover to take down a drug operation. And he becomes so committed that he agrees to go back to the prison where he once resided in order to infiltrate the mob, the criminal organization in there, to try and take them down. But what he finds out is that the FBI, one of the FBI agents that's handling him, is willing to let him die and finger him, or out him as an undercover guy and threaten his wife and child and his life in order to get the bust. So he has to somehow take the criminals down and get out of prison to save his family. And it's really, really intense what happens in this one. Excuse me. This was another... No, I had seen the preview for this. And when it came out, I grabbed it because it looked really good. And it was. Excuse me. The Informer. Number 5, we have one that you may be aware of. Some of my friends in the podcast are aware of this film. I was a big fan of this as a kid, still a big fan of it to this day. Watched it a lot on VHS. Now I have the DVD. It is from 1990, and it is called Cadence. And it takes place in a prison, military prison. And it's directed by Martin Sheen, who also plays a role in it. And it stars Charlie Sheen, and he ends up getting drunk one night, getting tattoos on the tops of his hands, which is not allowed in the military. And he ends up getting in a drunken fight and hits an MP and doesn't even remember that it happens. But he gets arrested and sent to prison. As his lawyer, played by F. Murray Abraham again, tells him, never hit an MP. And he's like, I don't even remember that. Charlie Sheen's brother, Ramon Estevez, is also in the film. And you've got... Let's see, it's a great cast because Martin Sheen plays the warden of the prison, and Charlie Sheen is a private Franklin Fairchild Bean. They always call him Bean in the movie. Lawrence Fishburne is in there as Roosevelt Stokes. Michael Beach is in there as Webb. James Marshall is in there. Lachlan Monroe. Christopher Judge, and F. Murray Abraham playing his military lawyer. And it's a fascinating movie because Charlie Sheen is basically the only white guy in the little cell block, or they have more like little cabins or kind of thing, small buildings that each little cell block inhabits, and he's the only white guy with a bunch of black guys in there. So not only is he in prison, he's also the odd man out, and he has to learn how to get along with his new cellmates. And he does. He ends up becoming sort of part of their group, which enrages the warden, who keeps trying to get through to him. But he's a very sadistic, kind of a sadistic prison warden. So he's caught between two. He's got like a rock and a hard place kind of thing. But Excellent, excellent movie. Cadence. Number 4, we have a film from 2001 called Mean Machine. And this is basically a UK version of The Longest Yard. Now, I never saw the original Longest Yard with Burt Reynolds, but this one came after that, but before the more comedic take that was with Adam Sandler and stuff. Well, this one's a UK one starring Vinnie Jones as a guy who gets in a drunken brawl and sent to prison. And you've also got Jason Statham in there as a character named Monk, who like barely ever speaks, has tattoos all over his place, all over his body. You got Danny Dyer in there. You have David Hemmings, Jason Fleming. And it's basically, it follows the same thing where they have a football, like the original one has a football game of the inmates against the guards. The Adam Sandler one has the football game, inmates against the guards. This one has a soccer game against the inmates against the guards. And a lot of it follows the same plot beats as those two movies, I believe. But there's a great scene where you get Jason Statham's character just basically, he's the goalie, and he runs out over halfway across the field to like dive into the air and headbutt to the soccer ball into the other guy's goal, and it's just hilarious. I'd say just as funny as the Adam Sandler one, but just but very different kind of humor, because it's the UK kind of humor as opposed to American or North American. But it's a great film. All right, number 3, we have the third in S. Craig Zoller's films. And I've referenced this before because I talked about the other 2 on different lists, Bone Tomahawk and Dragged Across Concrete. This is Brawl in Cellblock 99. And this one stars Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Carpenter, Don Johnson, Udo Kier, Mark Blucas, and it's pretty much Bradley Thomas is Vince Vaughn. He's a former boxer and drug mule, and he gets laid off from his job, and to make ends meet, he becomes a drug runner. Well, his wife is pregnant, and he is about to give birth, and he ends up in prison. And he gets approached by this doctor, Udo Kier, who makes him a deal he can't refuse. Like, you need to kill this particular prisoner in cell block 99, or we're going to do awful things to your wife and your unborn baby. So he really has no option. So he has to fight and get further and further into the more violent, vicious parts of this prison. And yeah, Jennifer Carpenter plays his wife. Don Johnson plays the warden. Udo Kier is, as I said, the doctor who approaches him. And as in with Bone Tomahawk, when there's violence in the film, it's pretty graphic, but it's a very well told prison action drama, more drama, but some action in there. You're just focusing basically on Vince Vaughn throughout the movie and his progression through the prison system. But it's excellent. S. Craig Zoller is definitely a director to watch, and he's already 3 for 3 in my books. That one's just from a few years ago, 2017. Okay, number 2, we have a film from 2002 called Undisputed. And this is a film by Walter Hill starring Wesley Snipes and Ving Rhames. And it's basically Wesley Snipes plays Monroe Hutchins, and he's a prison boxer. He's a prisoner in the prison, but he competes in the prison boxing system, and he's undefeated. And he's gaining so much attention by beating all these guys from his own prison and other neighboring prisons that he gets a chance to fight the current world champion, George Iceman Chambers, played by Ving Rhames. And they very much mirror what happened to Mike Tyson, where Beauty Queen accuses him of rape, and he gets sent to prison, just like what happened to Mike Tyson. And they have the same kind of having her talk on TV, and he insists he's innocent and goes to prison. But he's got instant credibility in prison because he's just a big guy and he's the world champion. And the warden sets up a fight between the world champion and the undefeated prison champion, and is going to televise it all over the world and stuff. But throughout the movie, George is intimidating Monroe, and Monroe is a very peaceful guy, except when he gets in the ring, just like knocks guys out left and right. But he's very peaceful in the prison. He's always like trying to just not engage. And it's got a good supporting cast. You've got Fisher Stevens as basically corner man. You've got Peter Falk as Mendy Ripstein. He's basically like an old school gangster who's been in prison forever and basically controls the prison. John Seda as Jesus Campos, who basically works for Mendy Ripstein, his main associate in there. Michael Rooker in there as one of the guards. Wes Studi is in there. Master P, Silk the Shocker, C Murder. You got like three guys from like Master P's rapping crew. Ed Lover is in there, Dayton Cali, and it's excellent. It's one of the best, probably one of my favorite boxing films, and almost one of my favorite prison films. So if I did a list that was just prison boxing films, but I don't know that I've seen enough that I could. Anyway, so that's Undisputed. Number 1 is one I watched not too long ago. I had it for a while without watching it, and then got rid of it, and I got it again just because I was curious. It's from 2008, and it's called Felon. And this one stars Stephen Dorff, Val Kilmer, and Harold Perrineau, primarily. It's a movie by Rick Romanois, who did Snitch. He's done some other films since. Marisol Nichols is in there. Nate Parker, Ann Archer, Sam Shepard, Nick Chinland. And it's pretty much Stephen Dorff plays Wade Porter, and he is trying to make ends meet with his wife. And one night, a guy breaks into their house. And Stephen Dorff chases him out the door with a baseball bat to try and apprehend him, and he ends up hitting him with the baseball bat and accidentally kills him. So he claims he was defending his house, defending his family, but the guy had already left his house and he still pursued him. So he went above and beyond the reasonable force to get rid of the guy. And so he gets sent to prison, and his first night in holding, he gets into a fight in the holding cell with several other prisoners. And then on his way to prison, while he's still awaiting trial, he ends up getting in trouble. Somebody stabs somebody on the bus and gives him the little shiv to hide. Well, that gets him in even more trouble. So his trouble is just compounding, piling on. He's getting into worse and worse trouble. He hasn't even got to prison yet. But the prison he gets to, and one of the main guards is played by Harold Perrineau, and it's sort of like a gladiator academy where the prisoners all get sent out into this big open enclosed space, and just immediately they go at each other fighting. And then when they want to break it up, the guards shoot like beanbags to knock the guys down. At the same time, a career criminal, or a career prisoner, I guess, played by Val Kilmer, plays John Smith, and he's serving a life sentence for doing something extremely terrible for possibly good reason. And you find that out when you watch. And he ends up being Stephen Dorff's cellmate, and sort of giving him a lowdown on how to survive in prison, because he's been there, for God knows how long. And so he's trying to survive in prison and keep his marriage intact. And though visits his wife, played by Marisol Nichols, makes to him don't always go well. But the relationship between Stephen Dorff and Val Kilmer is great, and then the evil bastard that Harold Perrineau plays in this film, because you see him outside of work, and he's like great, seems like a very nice guy, loving family man, and he gets into prison, and he's just like master of all, he surveys and just puppet master of all these prisoners, making them fight. Super, super intense movie, very well done. I'd say one of my favorite Val Kilmer performances, and certainly one of my favorite Stephen Dorff performances. I'm a big fan of Stephen Dorff. Yeah, so that one is called Felon. All right, another one in the books. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I really enjoyed making it and making this. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Toodles.